It's time now to check in on the markets as stocks rode broadly in Asia and also Europe today. Investors are remaining optimistic about the US-Iran ceasefire talks scheduled for this weekend. Meanwhile, oil prices continued to inch higher as the Strait of Hormuz remained largely shut. Well, as always, we can turn to Jameel Ahmad, Chief Analyst at GTC for some clarity. Jameel, a lot of uncertainty in the markets today, but investors are largely relieved over this ceasefire deal.
I think things can still change very fast. This remains a rapid situation, and you're right to point out there's definitely more optimism towards the end of the week and hopes that these talks in Islamabad will actually lead to the end of what has been a very unfortunate crisis for the region and also for the world economy as a whole when you consider how far-reaching these issues have been. Typically speaking, we do see more advances for world markets. This suggests that some risk appetite is moving back into investor atmosphere. Now, risk appetite means that investors are willing to take on some more risk in their portfolio. At the same time, we can expect that oil prices will remain volatile because there's a lot of questions that will remain unanswered for some time, such as what will happen in the Strait of Hormuz, what has been the real production issues, what supply is going to come into the market in the future, and so forth. So it remains a little bit of a heads and tails game to decide what might happen with oil prices day to day. But hopefully there will be more easing of the tensions this weekend that can help the oil prices move lower heading into next week. And then we have some weakness in the US dollar, which is a benefit thing because it suggests that investors are, let's say, adopting less of a cash is king method, which then suggests that they're more calm about the atmosphere. And we are seeing some returns to gold as well, which then suggests that central bank themes such as what will happen with interest rates later this year and so forth, they're coming a bit more into the forefront, which does suggest that we're seeing some easing of geopolitical tensions. And let's just keep fingers crossed it remains that way.
And you touched on it just then, I know, but consumers are, of course, all asking the same question right now. When exactly can we expect oil prices to drop?
It's not just consumers. I think everybody around the world, even if you're an analyst or working for Wall Street or these institutions too, nobody's exactly none the wiser. We can just hope for a couple of different circumstances here that would help their case. Number one, for the ceasefire talks and the diplomacy mission that's going to happen in Islamabad scheduled for this weekend, that is positive. That's going to help the matters. And then to get some news that the Strait of Hormuz is opening, which of course has up to 20% of world oil supply, which is pretty much happens to be stuck there. And then longer term, we have to know what damage has been caused to infrastructure and so forth, which obviously impacts the supply of the commodity that can be given out to the market. That's going to take some time to get answers for, but we do hope that as long as we see easing of tensions, this is going to help the case of lower oil prices longer term, which then helps consumers, that helps the inflation outlook and so forth. But the situation does remain fluid.
And Jameel, investors also keeping an eye on a report on corporate earnings due out next week.
Yes, so it might be a little bit early for corporate America and corporations and so forth to be saying what outlook or what impact this is going to have on current earnings. But we might see a little bit, let's say a metaphor here, the devil's in the detail. We have to look into the writing these corporate America and so forth are going to be putting out there towards what impact this crisis might have had on the world economy. And one of the ingredients here, which nobody knew and still doesn't know, is how long does the situation last for? And how long does it take for things to get to, let's say, a newer normal, which will provide stability for the world economic sentiment and corporations and then longer-term consumers. But typically speaking, we are going to be watching the earnings. But when it comes to economic data overall, it's actually been very much a second or third driver. In fact, it's something that we're not watching too much. We're just watching this regional situation, but hopefully that will change.
Jameel Ahmad, thank you.